45 years. In the last 15 years, a lot has changed. Absolutely. Yeah.
Well, my name's Martin Brookes. I'm with the NTCA. I'm second vice president. I've worked my way up through the ranks of NTCA by pretty much volunteering my time and getting out to guys like you and preaching the gospel. Sometimes it's taken well, sometimes not so well, but I'm pleased you're here, and I appreciate Ceramic Tile Design for putting this event on and actually taking the initiative to educate people on how to install these gauge porcelain panels successfully. So we'll keep moving on, and just feel free to ask any questions along the way. It's a very informal group, so just feel free. If it's going too fast or going too slow, just tell me to either pick it up or slow it down. So this program is registered with AIA, CES, and you do get CEUs. The paperwork's on there. I don't know whether anyone needs it, but it's there if you need it. We were expecting some architects and designers here, but it seems to be they didn't get the memo. We're going through the gauge porcelain tile panels and slabs, proper handling, substrate deflection, cutting, installation procedures, surface prep, and grouting issues. The one that I see is the most important here is surface prep. If you don't get that surface, the surface tolerances are much greater with this material than any other tile out there. We're looking at 1/8 in 10 feet as opposed to 1/4 in 10 with regular tile. Upon the completion, the participant will understand the potential applications for gauge porcelain tile or tile panel slabs, manufacturing techniques to reduce and recycle materials, and the benefit and use of thin tile. This method of making tile, we'll get into it on the further slides, but this is a really cost-effective way to make tiles as opposed to the old kiln-fired tiles. So the Europeans have really embraced this as a cost-saving and also a green initiative how to make tile. Upon completion, participant will understand why standards are required for the product, the importance of the specific installation procedures, and completing them in a defined order, which is really critical, and why detailed specifications are critical to the project's success. Gauge porcelain tile. The name's changed quite a lot. It used to be thin porcelain tile. It's gone through, I don't know, what you say, about 10 different name changes.
People still call it different things.
So you may see it actually referred to as a different name. This is a name now that's going to stick. Gauge porcelain tile is what it's going to be called from here on moving forward. They've decided that in the process of creating the standard, and gauge porcelain tile, GPT, is what it's going to be. Shower enclosures, the applications, shower enclosures made of gauge porcelain tile or tile panel slabs with no grout. It's a very, in the hospitality industry, it's a very economical way of remodeling hotel rooms without tearing out tile. They can do tile over tile as long as the tile is fully bonded and is in good shape. They can prime it, and then they can install the panels over the top without losing too much downtime on hotel rooms. Countertops covered with a single porcelain tile, just replicates stone. Tile over tile on walls and floors for remodeling. Exterior cladding, although we do have some restrictions here in California with the California Building Code. Tiling a radius with no seams. Here you can see a few examples of how it looks, and it is beautiful. We did a live demonstration in Vegas about 4 years ago on a fireplace, and it really looks fantastic when it's installed. Interior floors, exterior walls, interior walls, and countertops. Interior floors, you'll see a statement letter from NTCA that went out a few years ago. Salt Lake City's airport comes to mind that failed 2 times or 3 times when it was first put in through no fault of the contractor, and it put the contractor out of business just because the standards and the installation methods weren't there at the time. And he was a good contractor that actually couldn't take the burden of putting it back. Before, a dated look. During, that's the self-promoting primer there over tile on tile, and then you can put it in and you can really bring the bathroom up to date without doing the demo work, which in some cases is critical. No dust, no mess. All thin tiles are not created equal. Make certain you understand what product you're buying and the recommendations for its use. So I would say go to each manufacturer, whoever it be, and ask them for the details of how to install this stuff. Keep asking questions and get the answers you need before you start. I would also say, before you even bid it, ask the question and find out what the installation techniques are or the installation recommendations before, so you know you have that in your bid. Gauge porcelain tile should not be blindly specified for floors subject to impact, heavy objects, or rolling loads unless approved by manufacturer for the application. We went through a whole process in the technical committee meeting with NTCA because there was only one manufacturer who wanted to use the 3.5 mil on a floor, and they finally backed out when all the other manufacturers said, absolutely not, we're not warranted on a floor. So it just shows you these technical committees that we attend do actually carry some weight in having manufacturers back out of recommending a product when all the others fall in line. Mesh backing can differ both in composition and adhesive requirements. Mesh backing is not all the same. It could be a cellulose, it could be a resin. Different materials are required to adhere it to a substrate. Always important to ask that, because you may go into a job and you may think, I could do it with thinset, do a really good quality thinset, and then you might find out that it's a resin backed and you're going to have to use epoxy. Big difference in cost between even a good thinset and epoxy. And also the extra labor in installing it with an epoxy. When used on floors, full mortar coverage is critical to the successful installation. We recommend right now 95% of coverage with no more than 2 square inches of a void within the whole tile and all corners and sides. That is going to change as these tiles have gotten bigger. The consensus is to achieve that is getting much and much harder. That was probably for a 12 by 24 tile. Now we're installing tiles that are 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 feet. So it's getting much more difficult to hit that criteria on thinset coverage. Variations on thickness range from 3 mil to 6.5 mil, 1 meter by 3 meter, 1.5 meter by 3 meter. More sizes available as additional plants open. I think the way forward for this material is you're going to see cut to size. So get used to working with this material today, because it is going to come and be, I think, more normal in tile showrooms like this, where you see more cut to size and smaller formats of this same material. It is, again, with or without mesh. The thinner stuff typically has the mesh on it to hold it together. The thicker stuff typically doesn't. Innovations and expansion of the market. Tiling over existing tile has multiple environmental and time-saving benefits. Eliminates tear out, less downtime, significantly less dirt from demolition, little to no landfill waste. It's pushing the architectural envelope, as we know. Consistent look to the product, fewer dye changes, less raw materials, less energy usage, more square footage able to be transported, equals product efficiency. That doesn't mean to say it's cheap to install. I think a lot of people read that and they think it's cheap to install. This stuff today is not cheap to install. So here's the tile technology and the manufacturing techniques. The manufacturing grew up out of a need for environmentally friendly process, less energy and material required to manufacture per square foot. Manufacturers touting larger sizes as much as thin technology. New way to manufacture that is expanding globally. Tiles currently are being made in Italy, Spain, Turkey, China, and others. I don't know what others are. I think that may refer, the US is probably going to be making this within the next 2 years. There's no factory online, I don't think, to date, but I think within the next 2 years there probably will be. These factories are ultra modern with very few, not much manpower. It's all automation. Lamina and Continua are the two leaders in this technology. It's sold by Systems Corporation. Laminum is a product created in the Lamina factory and sold through different companies. You'll see this branded through different companies in the US, but it's made in Italy and it's made by the Laminum company. Continua is created by Sacmi, and there are no products sold by Continua in the US. This all gets rebranded and gets sold out there under different names. And there you have your traditional dust pressing, which is the old way of making tile. Very costly and not as efficient as the technology that you have above it. Here's the blend of power. It goes on a conveyor belt. It's rolled out. It goes through the kiln, it's fired, it's cut, and there you have it. You've got your sheets coming out the other side. Very sleek, very modern, 21st century technology. There you see its process as it goes through. Saves a lot of money. The cost in firing it is, I'm not going to quote a number, but it's significantly less than a kiln. That's a traditional dust press. So very clunky, very messy, very time consuming, and also very high on energy costs. These technologies are here to stay. We know that because there's been so much investment by the large companies. This is not going away. That will drive the market. Energy and efficiency gains driven by net positive economics and sustainability and metrics is going to determine that. The investment in this is too huge now for it not to be here for the long term. It's a win-win for everyone as long as we stay in front of the problems and use education as a tool. Like Phil said, if you're not in these classrooms and you're not getting educated, you're going to have to go through that learning curve of having failures. And the failures are not going to take the material away from the marketplace. It is going to be there, just like glass tile. I remember we embraced glass and we installed a lot of glass in the beginning because a lot of guys didn't want to do it because for them it was too problematic. We got in touch with the manufacturers, we got the right tools, we used the right materials. It wasn't problematic for us, and we were able to charge a premium because we were the only guys who could do it successfully. So I think it's good that you're here and that you embrace it and that you do get on the front end, that you can install it and actually make money from installing it.
One thing, this is kind of my opinion more than anything, if you think about where tile was 15 years ago, I'll say, I think when I was doing it, and then it went into granite slabs. And the whole business kind of changed where everybody had a granite slab kitchen or or now the showers are granite slab. Granite slabs are heavy, they're natural stone, they're brittle. There's a lot of things to them that are a lot more environmentally impactful than these products here now. Mm-hmm. So whereas now these, I think, are the next generation past everybody having a granite slab, because now these are countertops, these are faces of the cabinets, they're floors, they're walls. You can put them anywhere, and more environmental friendly. And in the process, the products can be recycled and moved, done over and over and over. So that's kind of how I see it going. So
and I could tell you, Terry, to add to that, the granite slabs that were put in 15 years ago, the jobs we work on are now in the landfill because they're gone. I mean, people are tearing those out.
Because those products, no matter how well you try to take care of them, they're still they stain, they scratch. These products are so hard and dense, they're almost bulletproof. Mm-hmm. They're really, really hard.
Thank you for that. Each system is proprietary. The moisture level and the recipe of the mix going through the process, the way the material is compacted, either through rollers and then in a press or in a belt. In the future, there may be a combination of these or newer technologies. Like I say, I know of 2 tile manufacturers in the U.S. who are all broken ground and are already in place to put these machines or these presses in the U.S.
Where are they?
Tennessee. Yeah, most manufacturing is because the feldspar and the natural resources for tile is based around Tennessee, so they want to be close for the green points, the lead points. They want to be close to where the Dow, Stone Peak, Crossville, they're all there in Tennessee. I think there's another one, I can't remember the name, but that's the tile manufacturing hub of the U.S. is Tennessee.
What is porcelain exactly? It's a type of clay, right?
Porcelain is defined by the way that it's baked and the porosity. So 0.5% would define a porcelain tile. So the difference between a ceramic and a porcelain is just defined by its porosity.
0.5% porosity in other words, they're less porous.
Less porous
than ceramic.
Yes, it's typically baked at a higher temperature and a better quality clay, less absorption and more difficult to work with, but less absorption than a ceramic tile. This is a statement letter that the NTCA put out in 14, so that's over 3 years ago now, based on the fact that before we had a standard, people were putting these 3.5 mil panels down on the floor, and they're having huge failures. So in order to protect our membership, we sent this letter out along with the union, which is IMI, TCAA. We sent this out to advise designers, architects, specifiers that our members should not be putting this down on the floor because it was hurting them and they were getting tied up in jobs that were failing. And so this came out of the technical committee meeting to advise the members they shouldn't be putting 3.5 mil on a floor. And that worked. That actually, I think, pricked a lot of ears in the room, and specifiers did actually stop specifying that for a floor area, and they went to the thicker material. Gauge porcelain tile product standards. Again, just released coverings in Florida this year. Took a while to get there. Took probably about 5 years, I think, from start to finish, maybe 6 years. Both the product standard and the installation standard came out at the same time, which again is unusual, but it happened simultaneously. American standard, so the product standard is 137.3, and the ANSI standard for installation is 108.19. Installation standards always start with a 108, and 137, 118 would always be product standards. That's how you can, if you're looking at something and you want to define the two, 108 would be a method, and 118, 137 would be a product standard. Current ANSI ceramic tile standards 137.1 are applicable for test in decuff, shade variation, stain resistant, chemical attack and absorption. The problem is with the old 137.1 and sampling, it was a 12 by 12 or a 12 by 24. So you can see the problems they had when all of a sudden now for shading issues, they've got a sheet that's 1 meter by 3 meter. And so a much larger tile, so they had to tweak that to make sure that it falls in line, because if you had any shading variation, you've got to allow a lot more variability in a larger tile than you have the smaller tile. Breaking strength, mesh backing versus plain back, warpage, how to measure a large tile that may be flexible. Standards need to be established. Other concerns are point loading, Robinson floor type tester, thickness requirements for floor use, expansive qualities, expansion joint requirements. Gauge porcelain tile and panels, slab 5 to 6.5 mil. That would be your Decton and some more solid materials. Back layered gauge porcelain tile and tile panel slabs, 3.5 to 6.5. Wet bond strength, minimum 100 psi. Dry bond strength, 150 psi. I'm not sure, where does tile start at? Do you know where the bond strength of tile is? It's lower than that. Minimum 5 millimeter recommended for floors. Breaking strength 5.0 to 6.5 millimeter is 175 pound-feet a foot, and the breaking strength for 3.5 to 4.9 is 85 pounds per foot. Letter of compliance certificate is issued from manufacturer to tile contractor when requested by tile contractor. A lot of these manufacturers actually promote the guys who have been on their training courses, and I think most of them have a referral system where they will refer you out if you've been on their training course. ASTM C627 is the Robinson test, which is a durability test. It's a wheel that spins around and around. They add weights to it until they actually get the tile to break. And that is in the handbook, and you can see some of the Robinson tests, and the tile will be rated through res or commercial rated for how it actually performs on the Robinson test. I think we have some pictures here of the tile breaking. So you'll see how many revolutions, how many cycles it went round, and then when they get to break it. It's a very good system, and it will actually give you a good test on how durable the tile and the whole build-up is with thin set before that tile breaks. Most distributors of thin porcelain tile have been working with installation product manufacturers and tool companies to present a system approach to installation. I know that we have two in here. I think Monolit's just left, but they've been very aggressive in being at the table to try to work a solution out with the installation guys. And it's been a three-way split between installation and manufacturing and tile manufacturers to get a system and a system approach to make this work. So everybody's been inclusive in this. It's not like The mortar manufacturers have just decided, oh, this works. They've actually involved everyone. As with any new product, specialized training on the product and installation techniques will help you achieve successful installations. I can't say that enough. It's really important. Now look for the statement on tile. This tile complies with recommended standard specifications for gauge porcelain tile and gauge porcelain tile panel slabs, ANSI A137.3. For it to meet A137.3, it's going to have to go through the testing, so it will have a mark on the tile or in the cut sheet that it actually has been tested to ANSI A137.3. Could we, Alicia? I'll bring you in. Is your tile tested to A137.3 yet?
I have no idea.
Okay.
Did you find out?
So it's a pretty new standard. As it rolled out in Florida, the manufacturers then the pressure's on them to get it tested at TCNA to meet that ANSI standard.
I will look right now.
Installation standards, which is most of us in this room, measuring the performance. Installation material and tile manufacturers, along with tile contractors, tool manufacturers from around the globe, have been collaborating on gauge porcelain tile. And when we say that from around the globe, that's true. I mean, I would say Italy, the US, Australia, England have been pretty instrumental in driving this. We had a delegate party go over to Italy probably 6 years ago, and they were appalled how this stuff was being installed in Italy. And the standards are a lot lower. Everyone thinks, oh, Italy is like, well, not so. So when the delegation party went over there and they pulled some tile off the wall, they found out they had a lot of voids behind the wall. They just couldn't believe how bad it was being installed. The driving factor here is, of course, attorneys. And they don't sue in Italy like they do here. So there was less emphasis on installing it correctly because they didn't get sued, and it was like, oh, it happens, it's just patinaed. So learn from the mistakes of the past and quickly develop robust methods for installation. Troweling techniques, by the way, is really important on this stuff. One direction troweling, collapse those ridges. It's very important on this material. Surface preparation is key also. The 1/8 in 10 feet as opposed to 1/4 in 10 feet for regular tile is really detrimental if you don't hit that. And 1/8 in 10 feet is really hard to hit. So the mortar manufacturers know that, and most of them have wall prep now, which they didn't in the past, or they're working on getting wall prep. Because we need that material as tile installers to true and plumb up our walls to get it to where we need to get to install that tile.
Go ahead.
Can you achieve that with self-leveling product?
On the floor, not on a wall.
So you can get to 1/8 with a self-leveling?
You can. Well, it's not. We don't like to use the word self-leveling. It doesn't self-level. There's some work involved in leveling. I mean, and Terry, if you go, I would actually, get with Terry and go to his Stockton seminar, because they do a really good job of showing you floor prep over there, and with the rake and getting in there with the spikes on the shoes. Again, it's a skill set that you guys should have, and knowing how to work with it, because many times in the past, I'll tell you, we've gone in there, we've mixed our self-leveling up, we've thrown it in, come back next day, and it's like, oh, gee, that's not level.
Yeah, no, I watched a video on YouTube, and because we do a lot of, we're required now to flush out with 3/4 inch hardwood, so we end up just doing skim floats, but our skim float is a lot less time than doing a self-leveler in most cases.
Mm-hmm.
But I was thinking maybe it wouldn't be a bad idea to know how to do it.
But
It's a pretty long process.
depending what you're skim coating with, typically the compressive strength is not there. And the materials that these guys have, the compressive strength is much greater, so you're getting a better surface to stick your tile to. Typically, if you're doing a mortar, a bag mix, and you're skimming thin set on top to try and hold it together, you're really falling in that category of not having the compressive strength, depending how thick or thin it is, to hold together when you put that tile on.
We always do Detra over it.
You do Detra over it, okay. But your Detra to perform correctly still needs a good bond strength below. It needs something solid. So, I would say ask both these guys questions about their products, because they both have very good products designed for that, rather than making something work for something it's not designed to do.
Sure.
So
there are guys that I've heard guys say that even with self-leveling products that they can't get that tolerance, and I think maybe it's just a mindset. It really does. It takes just a little practice and skill, understanding the mixtures and using the tools correctly. And it can be accomplished. Well, one thing that tile guys aren't really used to, and with these types of tiles, you may not necessarily need a self-leveling product and do the whole floor. If you've got bird baths, bellies in the floor, it's understanding just using patch and patching those bird baths, because you may have a pretty flat floor just with a dip. And just filling that in and understanding that that dip is going to cause a hollow spot because the tile spans so much footage. So it really is critical to get a flat, smooth surface. So sometimes it can just be as simple as that.
And it really is when they say it is critical. I mean, from a GC point of view, you've got to understand a lot of times these jobs are being bid, say, without the concrete being in there. So the guys have no idea the condition of the concrete until they get there. So you may see allowances I put a line item in there for floor prep, and it's like, why is it $15,000 in there for floor prep? Well, I can't tell you what it's going to cost. I may go in there, the floor may be perfect, which is, I've never seen that happen. Or I may only have to spend $2,000. Or we may be doing the whole floor throughout the whole home. So you really don't know at bid stage till you've poured your concrete and till we can go in there and check it, what kind of work we're going to have to do to get it to this point where we can install this tile. We have very little tolerance in a panel this big compared to a 12 by 12, 12 by 24 tile.
And then one thing he said quickly about the walls. I'm sure we all, from a manufacturer's standpoint, we all have something that can render a wall and get it flat and smooth too. So you just have to ask.
And Martin, also architecturally, when they do buildings, they're not speccing the concrete to be poured at this tolerance.
Mm-mm.
So, the architect is where it needs to get educated as well to be able to spec that if they're going to be.
Well, we have a statement letter from the Concrete Institute saying they can't meet our tolerance.
Right.
They can't meet our FF that we need to install
the floor
tile.
flatness, whatever it be, they can meet the tolerance, but it's going to only be
30 days.
No, it's 72 hours.
Right. But 30 days later it's shrunk and it's
right.
curled and it's,
So the floor flatness, when it's poured, and the concrete guys go to check it, it's in the middle of the floor, not between two cold joints.
Yes.
And like you said, in 30 days it's and that's when it costs the general contractor, the tile contractor, to bring it into the 1/8 inch or 1/4 inch and 10 foot.
Now they can stop it from curling and they can stop it from shrinking as much, but it requires more reinforcing and they're not willing to put the reinforcing in because it's added cost. So a lot of times between the expansion joints it'll curl, just as it shrinks it's going through its process. But, from when we started this, we decided, well, you need to put an allowance in there to get the floor where you need it. Otherwise you're going to incur the cost yourself if you don't understand. You need to flatten that floor.
You mentioned something, troweling in one direction.
Yes.
Trowel and then collapsing the...
Collapsing the ridges when you install. So you would
go
go short ways on the tile. So you burp in the tile. So you're troweling across, so you're able to squeeze the air out from the tile on both sides.
Right, so you're not going...
You don't want to see fans. You don't want to see dots.
Yeah.
I mean, one of the mistakes I see a lot of guys, they install a tile and they don't get it where they want, so they pull it up and then they put the dots on back, and that's really a pedestal. It's a thin set pedestal system that they've created, and none of those ridges are even being touched now. They just wasted the money on all the thin set they put in there.
Scrape it all off and start again.
Right. Well, had they flattened the floor first, they wouldn't be having this problem. I mean, the trick is, it's like building a house. It's only as good as the foundation it's on. If you don't get your substrate perfect, then you fight it all the way. So my experience, and doing it wrong myself for many years, the best way to do it is flatten your substrate and start there, because it's going to go a lot faster and a lot easier and a lot less thin set, which is the expensive stuff, if you perfect and get that substrate right from the beginning. So anybody who goes in there, like I always say, we don't get there at 8:15 when we're installing tile. Sometimes we don't install tile, depending on the job, 2 or 3 days. We're prepping the surface. We're making sure that the limitations of the thin set are met. We're not building up thin set 1 inch because it will shrink. you'll have a perfectly flat floor, and then when you come in next day, there's going to be lippage everywhere as it shrinks back and it starts to, or it's going to fracture your tile, depending on your tile. This is what we've been asking for from the manufacturers, is the wall mud right here, and hopefully, manufacturers have lots of stuff for floors, but there's very little out there for walls, and we're installing this stuff on walls too, so it's important we have it for walls too. Both of these guys have very good floor products, by the way. And one of them has a supercap, which is a pumped system, which does a lot of high-rise, big commercial jobs that pumps this stuff after the concrete guy's finished and levels out the floors. Slab-on-grade concrete floors, minimum 90-day cure, over well-bonded and properly prepared existing tile over slab-on-grade concrete floors. Crack isolation, sand reduction, or uncoupling membranes may not be recommended due to the deformability and lack of specific performance testing. Can any of you two comment on your uncoupling membranes, whether you actually recommend it for gauged porcelain panels?
We do not, right?
You do not?
No.
Yeah, I don't know.
I don't think yours is.
How about Detroit?
Not going to be able to use it.
You do a thick set.
You could do a paint on crack ISO, but not a uncoupling. By the way, there's no standard for an uncoupling membrane. There is only an ANSI standard for the crack isolation, but not for an uncoupling. We should be seeing that, but it's been promised for a
Primarily
while.
because the thickness of the crack isolation and the amount of prep work and making sure that every single one of those pockets is filled correctly in the whole 9 yards, and the inherent compression that can
Point load, yep.
Yeah, that can cause cracking. So you're better off going to a solid surface underneath.
And there's our minimum 5 mil thickness on the floor there. So anytime it's tile over tile, though, the tile that's there, the existing tile has to be well bonded. You're not going to put this stuff because you have a failing floor and you want to make it look pretty. That's not going to work. Whatever's down on that floor below is going to telegraph up through the 5 millimeters. For panels 1 square meter or larger, use suction cup frames. For panels 1 square meter or larger, use at least 2 people to remove from shipping crate. Qualified labor required. ACT manufactured training. Rolling loads over gauge porcelain tile must have rubber wheels.
You go back one slide.
Yep.
I just want to point something out by implication, because it's not actually said here. But as far as I understand, TSNAE does not recommend putting these over wooden constructs.
Mm-mm.
That was okay. Thank you. So we're not going to get into how to install this over a wood
Just a
frame
second.
floor. Okay.
You're pointing out that gauged porcelain panels should not be used over wooden subfloors.
Right.
I just wanted to understand that.
And that's coming from, Laticrete won't warranty any of their products. There may be some other manufacturers there who say we don't have a problem, but Laticrete, I don't know about where
I
Ardex
think
on
a
that.
lot of the actual manufacturers don't want it.
Don't want it either. Yeah.
Tile man.
So manufacturers' recommendations overrule any standard out there. So what they do our standard is really a minimum start point. And what they say goes way above that, and that's the one that sticks.
And walls and countertops?
No,
Vertical's not an issue.
Yep. You do 3.5 mil on vertical. There is a California building code requirement, though, for anchored veneer, and because the California building code has not caught up with the panels that are out there, and it takes them forever to catch up. It's really a gray area right now on mechanically anchoring these panels on an exterior facade in California.
So you can't use these on the floors in most residential homes?
On the ground floor, but if it's a wood structure, probably not.
No.
Mm-mm.
Are the salespeople going to tell the owners that?
Probably not. Depends how bad they want the sale.
Yeah, so that's something I hadn't heard. So I wasn't specifically aware of that. Is there a
I think we have something on here a little further along
Okay.
on the installation side, but we'll get to that.
Okay.
So we were having this conversation earlier about the manpower to install this stuff. It's way more than installing regular tiles. So if you've got a 2-man crew, you want to double up and have a 4-man crew.
We recommend minimum 4 guys.
Minimum 4 guys. You've got to have somebody spreading the substrate, you've got to have somebody spreading the tile, and then you've got to move it in position and set it. It really is a minimum of a 4-man job, crew size to get this job done. And that's where I see the problem is guys are doing this with 2. And they're trying to make it work, and the thin set's skinning over on them, and they're not getting it up on time, and it's failing.
Even though self-leveling crews with 2 are stretched.
Yeah, it's a stretch. You can't physically mix the material up, get it on in the open time, and have it be successful with a 2-man crew. You can't. It's almost impossible. And then you get in the warmer climates like Arizona and Texas, and you're really struggling.
Or in Sacramento.
Yeah,
Or in
because
Sacramento.
A lot of these guys, you're doing your mortar applications in the garage, or somewhere you need room.
Yep.
And the temperatures are going to be higher, or you're going to have wind and factors like that. And so that's why the mortars come into play. You need to make sure mortars have longer open times, and just a lot of those factors.
Well, we have Montolit here, so it's more in his line, but proper handling and storage is key. You can't install this without the proper handling equipment.
Like you said, you can transport it like they are here on the left.
On
You
edge.
always want to make sure that you're keeping it in a vertical position so that that's the strength of the tile. Try and put that into a horizontal position.
Can't do it.
You're going to get that flex, and it can
Air entrapment.
very easily for you.
Well, not only that, but you get air entrapment. You're trapping a lot of air right in the middle of the tile. It's more difficult to remove. Just the flex in the tile alone, it's just not a good idea. You don't want to be doing this with suction cups alone. You need a spine. You need to put a spine on it to keep it rigid. I actually wouldn't even take the risk of carrying it like those guys, honestly. I mean, I would want to carry $500, $600, $700, $800 a panel. I'd be putting a spine on that. Because if that guy wants to take a corner to the left or the right and is stressing it in the middle, that's probably going to fracture. Best success using large and heavy tile, LHT, formerly medium bed mortar. We were, again, this is where NTCA comes to play, and we got the manufacturers to take away the medium bed mortar name, and some of the manufacturers weren't very happy with us because they got silos full of bags that they needed to use that said medium bed, and they had to trash those. And they had to be called large heavy tile. The reason why, and it's not getting on the manufacturer's point, it's that architects, designers saw that medium bed and they thought, ooh, we don't need to float the floors anymore, we can use a medium bed mortar. And it don't matter if the floor is not an 1/8 in 10 or a 1/4 in 10. They have a mortar out there that now does the job. So why would it cost so much to do floor prep? Not the case. Medium bed mortar was never designed to true up a surface. It was there to carry the weight and give added weight of the large, heavy tiles. It was there to give a successful installation so the thin set just didn't ooze out to the sides. So there is a huge disconnect there between the A&D community and the manufacturers and the tile installers about what it was meant to do. And I think we all can take a little blame for that, of how it was misconstrued, because I know a whole bunch of tile installers that were using it to true up walls and floors. So.
And we're talking about a thin set.
Yes.
Yeah.
And thin set in its name itself is a thin set. And it shouldn't be used as a truing up or the thin set really needs to be a regular thin set, 330 seconds when it's compressed. That's this thinness that it needs to be. And it needs to be consistent. It can't go from 330 seconds to 1/2 inch to 3/4 back down to 330 seconds. Mortar classification, there we have the ISO 13007 and the ANSI 115T. 115T is a very high-performing thixotropic super dupe. You have 115T, you have 115T, you have 13007, you have that too, and these guys have it. So, IN mortars can deform and minimalize. These mortars can bend. They can actually flex without fracturing.
Yeah, those classifications, the C2s and TEs and S's, I don't know if you guys understand what all those are.
That's a story for another day. That's an advanced class.
Because you see a lot of things on there so technical, people are like, What do I need? Super glue? You know, what is this?
So that's what I was referring to, providing a key to the ISO designations,
Mhm.
so you can read, you know, what a C2 is, or a TE, or S1 are.
So, you know, as you know, a lot of these mortars are really high performing. You can stick a tile to a ceiling and it won't fall off. Very high performing, and there's a cost to pay for that. And you use the right material for the application, right? So going to Home Depot and buying dirt in a bag is not going to work for this kind of tile. And go there any day of the week and go and look and see what's being loaded onto the truck with the guys performing the work with large tile. And all driven by cost, by the way, not doing it right or driven by cost. Work with tile and adhesive manufacturers. I have a relationship with all of them. It don't matter what the company is, I have a relationship with all of them and call them regular and frequently and ask them questions. Open time mortars will give longer installation window and reduces mortar skinning. So as we get into these summer months, mortar skinning, huge problem. Even here in Marin, your surface temp could be 110, 120. You put that thin set down, you spread too far ahead of you. Before you even put a tile on there, it's skinned over. It's not going to stick to anything. Deformation and adhesive considered to be key to success. There we have the S1, the S2. Epoxy mortar may also be appropriate. You get into the epoxy mortars, though, then you're bumping up your installation costs, not only for the raw material, but for the time and the cleanup and the expertise in working with an epoxy mortar. Spread only as much mortar as could be covered while the mortar surface is still wet and tacky. Really important. Do not allow mortar to skin over. Recommendations on direction of method of troweling may vary by manufacturer. I don't think there's any manufacturer that I know of who would recommend anything than straight line troweling. Maybe a Euro notch that would give you squiggly lines, but I don't know of any manufacturer who is not saying to the tile installers, today you can trowel however you want, you can put your name in there, you can do patterns. It's all straight line troweling.
And it's always the
Smallest dimension. And again, it's to burp the tile to get the air out. You need to get the air out, you need to collapse the ridges. You can't collapse the ridges with an air entrapment.
Is being back buttered?
Yep.
Yeah.
No, that's actually being troweled.
Oh, troweled.
That's-
See the ridges.
Yep.
But that's on, that's mud on the.
That's on the back of the panel. Yeah. Yeah.
And
So.
you got mud on the floor, mud on the.
Well, at the same time the guy's doing that, there would be a crew putting it on the wall. And next step is then I don't see the frame on that. The frame's probably underneath. Next thing is to get it up there and get it on the wall as quick as you can before it skins. Either one of those surface skins over, it's not going to adhere. It's going to come off.
We're going to go over a lot of that stuff outside.
We have it all outside.
Here we go. There's a perfect example. This, by the way, when anybody pulls a tile off, you want to be looking for this right here. Anytime you go in and you say to your tile installer, can you just pop a tile up for me? You want to see that. You don't want to see that. You want to see that.
How much of that do you expect to see?
All of it. We strive for all of it. You might not hit it all the time, but you want to see all of it like that. That's a good install. Anybody who can achieve that is a good installer.
The upper picture is what we're talking about.
Yep.
Martin, I was on a job, just to kind of bit of levity here. I'm on a job working with my cousin on a weekend, helping him out. He's real busy, and he's got a guy working for him, and that's who I was working with that day. And we're installing 6 by 35-inch planks. And he pulled up a tile, and it was sitting against the wall. It's got a chip or something in it after he'd already put it in. He pulled it back up, set it on the wall, and I have a picture of it. And all it had was the ridges across the back of the tile, and there might have been one spot, because it was probably a high spot in the concrete that looked like that. And I said, you know, the whole tile should look like this right here. He thought the fact that the ridges went from side to side across the whole tile, that was full coverage.
Yep.
And he's installing right now, and he's been doing it for I don't know how long.
Well, in his defense, it was full coverage. It wasn't full contact, right?
That's a good point. That's a good point.
He had full coverage. He just didn't have full contact.
I tried to explain that to him, and he just goes, dude, you're freaking me out, man. Are you serious? I went, yeah.
So the guys who say we've been doing it 20, 25 years, typically when I go to on my inspection side, typically when I go to a job like that and I pop it out, that's what 25 years gets you. Gets the ridges still up. So just because that's not the part that people see, the tile could be beautiful. The install could be like, wow, look at this install. But when I go behind and I see the meat and potatoes behind it, it's not so good. We all have room for improvement. Believe you me, and we're all learning every day. And I just wish more people would get involved in that learning process and understand what a good install looks like, what coverage looks like. How do you identify it? Should it look stippled? Should it look like ridges? I mean, just knowing that alone saves you bacon at the end of the day. Because I have my guys, even though they've worked for me for years, I still have them pop a tile up once in a while, and I want to see behind
He
it.
couldn't understand what we're doing, and understand the floor probably wasn't perfect. Well, it wasn't perfect, but it probably wasn't even tolerance. But it had been ground down, and it would become somewhat flat, and it's kind of something they're doing now, understanding that they're putting in plain tile. But he couldn't understand how come I was able to do the section without, he never saw me like have to pull one up and kind of, you know, do the butter and whatever, and it's because I was using the right, I had a 1/2 by 1/2 notch trowel. And he goes, I don't even own one of those. He goes, what is that? And I said, that's the right trowel you should be using. What, you know, I'm like, what? And he said, yeah, I don't even own one of those. And he goes, dude, you're going to use all kinds of thin set. I said, well, first of all, you don't even buy it. The company is supplying it for you. Yes, absolutely. I'm trying to get covered. So he didn't understand how come I could get the tiles in without using Lippage tuning, you know, products, and make it look nice and flat without having to pick it up and butter in it. And I got pictures. He's got stone blocks sitting on corners, and he's popping up corners, and he's
Pedestal system. A thin set pedestal system.
Because he doesn't trowel in one direction. He doesn't make sure it's the right thickness of a notch trowel. He was using a
How long had he been doing it?
Huh?
How long has he been doing it?
Him?
20 years?
At least 10 years.
At least. Okay.
Since I used to work for this company way back when, and he worked then, so at least 15 years. Yeah, it's crazy to see some of them.
This is my friend's company, Artcraft in Arizona, James Wolfel. He's been working with this for a long time too. He supplied these photos. But he knows how to, he's working in hot temperature. He's in Phoenix. So he knows how to work with this stuff in these hot climates. And having the right tools, having the right thin set and having the guys trained is really, again, critical. We did start using a method of using a sander on there. The first method was that we called it the crossfill shuffle. So it was getting on the tile in the middle and doing a shuffle out to the edges and burping the air out. And we didn't think that was a very, should we say, scientific method of installing tile. But it stuck for a while. That was a recommendation from the manufacturer, was to get on the tile, 2 guys on the tile, and shuffle your feet across it and burp the tile. And then they came up with the orbital sander too, to vibrate the thin set, to have the thin set ooze out and collapse itself from underneath. And that still works. But it's always important to start from the center and work your way out so the ridges don't collapse on the edges. Because if the ridges collapse on the edges, then the air can't get out. You've made a pocket. So the key is to collapse the ridges from the middle of the tile and work to the edges.
You're flexing the tile as you do that, but just a minimal.
Well, one of my questions, I remember being in that meeting and I said, well, a guy like me is going to be different than, say, a guy like Caesar, right? I'm 120 pounds heavier than him, so how does that affect it? And the answer was, well, it doesn't really make any difference. And I beg to differ. I think if me and Terry got on a tile and tried to squeeze the air out, would be a lot different than Caesar and his buddy at like 170 pounds getting on there and squeezing it out. I just didn't feel it was very scientific or a very good method. But that was in the beginning, so they were really struggling to get these methods going on how to do this. So, lippage control systems. I like them. I don't think it's an excuse for a skill set. I think you need to master the skill of installing tile before you even look at these, and you shouldn't be using them as a way to shortcut a tile install. They're an aid. They help you. First of all, we'll take away thin porcelain panels or gauge porcelain panels away from this. If you're installing a regular tile, a 12 by 24 porcelain tile, you are not going to get a 12 by 24 porcelain tile to bend. You're not. It's going to crack. I don't know of anyone who could actually flex a 12 by 24 tile. What you do, you're just truing them up with each other. So you're still going to have some warpage in there, but you're just truing each tile up to each other. They're a good aid, but it's not an excuse for a skill. So they do help. It's very specific on these panels. You can't be any more than 2 inches away from the corners. You've got to be at least 2 inches or more away on the corners, and you can't do the snow plow effect. So a lot of guys were putting them in, and then they were moving them into position, and they were snow plowing the thin set with it as they moved it, and now they were leaving a void back here. So that void then became a potential weak spot, and it would actually fracture if it was on a floor. So knowing how to use these lippage control systems is always key. And also cleaning out your mortar. Don't forget you're using a very high performance mortar here that probably dries to a much greater PSI than dirt in a bag. If you leave it in there too long, it's going to be real difficult to get it out. And you need a clean joint in there to be able to get grout in. This tile's not that thick. Again, we go through the removal of the lippage system, install the grout. It's per manufacturer's NCA 108.6, 1.9 and 0.10, all high-performing grouts. Grout type varies based on area of use, responsibility of owner, designer, professional to confirm appropriate grout for intended use. I don't think you'd be wanting to use a regular cementitious grout on a thin panel porcelain, gauge porcelain tile job. First of all, you wouldn't have the strength because you've not got the depth. So you'd want to be using a high-performance grout on that. I don't think you'd recommend any of your lower performing, no. And I'm sure both you guys are probably not selling too much low-performing grouts these days. You're more on the high performance.
And isn't there minimum requirements for grout joint size depending on interior and exterior?
Well, you'd still need EJ 171, so you're still going to put, and sometimes every one of those may be an expansion joint. So that would be determined on its exposure to the southern facing.
No, but I mean with the width of them, I think there's a minimum of, what I was saying.
Like 3/16?
Yeah, Mike said out there earlier today, and I couldn't remember exactly, that's why I'm asking. I believe, and he said 16th.
I think it is a
16th.
16th.
On the wall interior, but on the exterior, it's 3/16.
3/16. And again, it depends.
So you need to understand that when you're getting ready to do the job, the homeowner want, the homeowner get. You know, it's no one wants grout joints. That's one of the points you get tiles this big. They don't want grout joints.
Well, we fight that all the time with expansion joints, even in a bathroom. I mean, you know, we run that risk. Sometimes we don't put them in on a ceramic tile that has no heat or any exposure to sunlight on an interior of a building. But even glass tile, we know better than not to do that with glass tile. So we won't do a glass tile job without doing soft joints everywhere, because that's why we started at the beginning. That's why we were getting the jobs, because we didn't have fractured tiles, because we were putting in the expansion joint. The hot water alone from the shower head will expand the glass significantly to fracture the tile glass, the glass tile, as opposed to a ceramic. So there are things that you need to take into consideration when you're working with these materials about what your risk is. What can I do and what can't I do? I mean, the book is, it's a recommendation. It's not the Bible per se. You don't have to follow it by the book, but it's a recommendation based on failures and guys being in a room that hammer it out and say, hey, we need to do this because when we did this, it failed. And this is how we get to where we get with the standard. To complete and finish the installation profiles for corners, deco bands, edges, expansion joints, perimeter edges are available from quality suppliers. I am yet to see, with the 3mm, a profile that looks good. I don't think anybody would want the 3mm. Even though there's a manufacturer out there that makes it, I don't see the point in using the material if you're going to put an edge profile on 3mm. I think the best way is to back cut it and seam it and make it look like monolithic. I think putting in the edge profile just takes away the whole thing of putting in.
What was that radius corner note early on in the presentation?
Well, you can tool it. You can the thicker stuff you can tool like a slab manufacturer. You can bullnose it.
Got it.
So there are tools. I'm sure that Montolit has it. They have the profile wheels to make the bullnose on the panels, but you won't be able to do that on a 3mm. It's too small. Even back cutting a 3mm is risky because you're taking most of the meat out the panel. So you can do it, but it's tricky, and then a lot of epoxy and a lot of sanding to get that to look good. Robinson floor testing service ratings, again, you'll see that in the TCNA handbook with the service ratings. Again, standard trowels sometimes not adequate. Sometimes you have to use special trowels that give a certain pattern of thin set ridges to make that work. Use of an orbital sander to remove air. Mechanical lippage control systems are best practice. Best results with ANSI 118.15 thin set adhesive or the ISO 13007-1 C2ES1 adhesives. I understand why people don't want ISO on there, because it's like they're always very long and drawn out, right? We have 118.15.
So we're talking larger notch trowels, as you were discussing.
They call them zipper trowels too, where they're a certain pattern, or Euro trowel, and it gives a certain pattern that the ridges are able to collapse on themselves a lot easier than just a peak and valley. And so these zipper trowels trowel in a way that when they put the panel on, they will collapse easier. And the manufacturers have done testing with that, and it actually is conclusive that these zipper trowels do work sometimes better. Now, not all zipper trowels are the same, though. You've got to find out which one to use. I think, do you even recommend one, a zipper trowel?
We use that. I don't know what the specific name is, but we have them out here. We got them from
Ramondi?
Yeah.
I think the Ramondi one is the one that the...
I know about a Euro trowel, and it's got the high ridge, low ridge, high ridge, low ridge. I think it's half quarter, something like that. I don't know.
Existing joints in substrate to be carried through the thin porcelain tile where they meet restraining surfaces, perimeter walls, curbs, columns, and corners, and it all changes a plane in the work. That goes with all tile, not just this tile, all tile. Joints are to be clean and free of contaminants and thin set mortar. Refer to TCNA Handbook Detail EJ171 for industry guidelines. So this is one thing that we as tile installers tend to not adhere to. And outside decks, flat work, really running a risk when you don't put EJ171 in there. I have two right now I'm looking at that have both failed with no EJ171.
You literally have to have a tile layout worked out prior to the structural slab being poured.
Yep. I'm yet to find a designer or architect who wants to put a EJ171 in.
Highly doubted.
It's getting worse and worse now that the tiles are offset.
They're getting bigger and they're rectangular.
And no one wants to cut a line right across the...
Well, I think the sawtooth come back in. So the proprietary method, Laticrete had that as a sawtooth method, but I think the sawtooth method is back in the handbook this year with an expansion joint. I do believe.
I think I've seen that before. But you look at this pattern here, exactly, depending on the offset that there is. Sometimes there's just no good way of doing it. So, trying to figure that in before the installation is...
One of the best ways, actually, is perimeter. So if you've got siding coming down or you've got some way to hide it on the perimeter, the more you can get on the perimeter, the better. So 1/2 inch, 3/4 inch around the perimeter is going to save you bacon at the end of the day. Even if you only had one down here and this was south facing, it was a black tile. If you had perimeter joints 3/4, I would say in California you'd probably be okay.
People skip that so much.
Oh yeah. Here's the placement right now, and you can see with the 3/8, 1/16, 3/8 movement joints, 8 feet on center. Again, finding an architect or a designer who wants expansion joints 8 foot on center. Good luck with that one. And it all depends too. It's on the. This is being actually revised as we speak. I think the interior is going to be revised to a different layout than it is now. But again, you see, add 3/16 to the movement joint width at the bottom there for every 50 degrees above 100 degrees. So that would be really, and that's not ambient temperature. That's surface temp. So even in Marin, we're hitting 110, 115 in summer on surface temp. So when you get into Southern California, Arizona, Texas, you're hitting those numbers quite easily at surface temp. It's amazing. We did a deck in Tiburon, and we got the joints cut in every 8 feet. I could hear that deck in the morning when the sun. I could hear it creaking. I could hear it growing. And we saw the silicone actually. We saw the back rod and the silicone push up in about 1 o'clock, 2 o'clock in the afternoon. It was pushing out. It was higher than the tile. And then we got there in the morning. It was like back out again. So it's going through that process all day, every day while that sun's hitting it. It's going through that process. Yeah, you could hear the wood. You could hear the structure. You could hear it growing. Use a zipper trowel or a slant ridge trowel to apply mortar. Different mortar manufacturers may recommend different trowels. Use a trowel that facilitates ridge collapse and therefore increased coverage after back buttering and placement. Spread the mortar on the substrate and the thin porcelain tile in the same direction. Trowel mortar parallel to the short side of the tile. There's the trowel. You have the
Zipper.
You have the zipper one? Okay. You got a different handle on it though, right? With the, yeah. So that's what we're looking for with the trowels.
People make those.
Yeah. One thing here for the people who work here is how to pick it up. You can't pick it up short side. You've got to pick it up from the long side. So you have to have extended forks, 84 inch. You've got to pick it up from the end. When you take it off at the other end, you've got to take it off from the end. If you try to pick it up sideways, you're going to fracture the slabs as they bend in the middle. So that's been logistically, that's been a challenge also for getting this stuff to places. And people who actually are the distributors understanding how to work with it. One thing I would say, just back on that, is if you see it spec'd, say you have a high-rise in San Francisco, you want to make sure you can get it up. So it goes in the elevator, you can turn the corners, or you can find a way to get it in, because we've seen jobs where there's just no way to get it in. The specifier, the architect, designer, they want it, people bid it, and then the day they start, the material comes, they can't get it upstairs. So a lot of these high-rises that are going in San Francisco right now, they're actually bringing it up with a tower crane before the buildings are finished. So they're going in there and they're being staged on the floor before the sheetrock's in. That's the only way they're going to get them up there.
It's like moving a piano up.
Yep.
It's the only way to do it.
Proper tile scoring and breaking, edge removal with diamond pads, penetrations and perforations. Caesar's left, but he was telling me he had a problem where he had a window to cut out in the middle of a panel and he struggled with it. So having the right bits to drill the corners and then cut to the corner is critical. We actually use C.R. Lawrence as drill bits because they're glass, and glass is much like porcelain, and we find that to be the easiest way to cut these things. Consult with technical department or the tile manufacturer for more information. All these thin panel manufacturers have very good hotlines that you can call up and get good information. Workbench, sturdy and flat, larger than tile size, frame suction cups for handling, thin porcelain tiles such as European Tile Masters, Eurogrip, Lamina, Easy Frame and Ramondi Free Move, specialized trowels to facilitate full mortar coverage, pressure pliers for snapping a scored tile, deck brush, right angle grinder with a 4-inch continuous rim diamond blade, diamond tip hole saw, diamond sanding blocks. To get set up with the whole equipment, it's about a $7,000 to $8,000 investment. As of today, new ANSI standards for product and tile installation, the 137.3 and 108.19, ensure gauge porcelain tile labeled. Alicia told me that the tile they sell here is labeled. It is 137.3. Purchase and read ANSI A108.19. I don't know whether anyone has that. I don't know. Did you get your hierarchy supply you with one yet? No? You've not got one? Okay. It will. I think the handbook's not available yet, so hopefully it's released. I'm not sure. To understand the tile installer, GC, and design authority responsibilities. Follow manufacturer's instructions very carefully. Tile and mortar manufacturers can provide directions for successful jobs, conduct testing for future installation changes, provide new use for the new exciting new technology.
Hopefully not too exciting.
Well, thank you. Always follow your manufacturer's recommendations. Ensure the tile and materials are recommended for intended use. New technologies provide a great opportunity to expand your business. Work with tile, setting material, and tool manufacturers for education and help on your specific application. Practice with tools, including the lippage control system. One thing about practicing with this material, it's real expensive. So to practice with it is going to cost you $600 a panel. So I don't know whether you talk with Alicia and see if she has any broken ones that she could give you a piece of that you may have to...
She does.
Yeah. So I would actually get one of those and practice with it if she's willing to throw one at you and say, hey, work with us, and then work with it and just play with it.
I have a lot of them over.
Yeah.
You guys want to take keys?
They- That's me, and I'll take questions. John?
Have you had experience with using high-pressure water cutting to cut designs in a large panel porcelain?
Yeah, I have not myself, but if you have a cut that you can't physically do, I would actually send you out to have it, and Cindy's husband will water jet it for you.
Well, I was thinking more of, I've done this with steel, but not tile, is to use a cutting, a vector reading computer control head that will cut a precise, like a horse.
Yep.
Say if you want to
Yep.
cut that. Have you ever seen that done?
I've not seen that done.
Okay.
But I can tell you on glass tile jobs we do, when we get a cut like an escutcheon around a valve or anything, we don't even attempt it. I just take it to Cindy's husband. And
Do you have their card?
yeah, Cindy has. It's Marine Glassworks. But I would, rather than spend hours and hours and breaking tile after tile and tile, just take it up there and he'll cut it for you for a small fee. And there's no stress put in the tile. The problem when you cut glass tile, you put a lot of stress into the tile, and it may not fracture immediately, but it may fracture.
So you would take porcelain tile to them as well?
If it was a tricky cut that I couldn't do, and I felt like, well, this is too risky. If it's like round an escutcheon, there's lots of shapes and valves coming off it and stuff, I would for sure. It's worth my drive up to Roanoke Park to do it for sure.
Marine Glassworks?
Yeah, get a card from Cindy. It's her husband that does it. But it's not even worth the risk of breaking. I mean, some of this glass tile, you could be $50, $60 a piece. It's not worth it. You get through 5 tiles and you still can't cut a hole in it. Or you cut a hole in it and like 2 months later you get a call back. Hey, that tile you cut? I can see a crack going right from the corner to the valve. It happens. But it doesn't need to if you take the glass up there, because he puts no stress in it with the water jet. So you put in stress in it when it's almost impossible to cool the glass down fast enough without putting the stress in it. You put in the heat source to it, and we've used coolant, we've used car coolant before to try and cool it down faster because water just evaporates. But the oils in the car coolant can mark the back of the glass, so then you start to see fingerprints or dark spots when the tile's set. So you've done the right thing by cooling it down fast enough, but then you get the call back saying, I see all these dark spots on the back of the tile. Well, you've contaminated the back of the tile. So it's just worth taking it up there. Now, believe you me, I learned the hard way on that one too. So, but there's always a fix it, for a problem. You just have to find out the problem, or the fix for the problem. Any more questions? That's it. Wow, you're a good bunch. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.